Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you joining me today. Today's going to be a very simple video. It's going to be my salary negotiation masterclass. We're going to cover everything from the beginning, from research, evaluation, all the way through having the conversation and how to practice the conversation, even without being presented the real world opportunity. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So first things first, a lot of people are nervous about negotiating their salary out of fear. They're fearful of losing their job if it's from the offer perspective, or maybe when they go in for their annual review, they just think it's something that's not the cultural norm, whatever it might be. And Career Builders did a study that came out with 73% of employers expect you to negotiate at the job offer. On the flip side, salary.com, one of the most reputable sources, which I do recommend for salary research, they did a study that came back with 87% of employers did not take back an offer just because somebody negotiated. So we're talking anywhere from 3/4 to almost 8.7 out of 10 times employers are expecting this to happen. This is the norm. And those are just two studies. There are plenty more out there, and it's almost impossible to find any that say that not negotiating is actually the normal and expectation. It is quite the contrary. Now, on the flip side, something else is that 55% of employees out of the Career Builder study said they've never negotiated. So that's what makes me have to feel like I have to make this video to hopefully help you guys not only feel like you can negotiate and kind of flip that mindset, but also empower you to do it successfully. And this is going to be rooted in the data behind the scenes, my own experience, the people who have mentored me's experience, as well as my clients. And again, not every negotiation is going to be successful. You won't always get what you want. And then when it comes to the final decision, it's ultimately up to you. But you should at least be trying 100% of the time. And let's just do some simple math here as to what negotiating or not negotiating will cost you in the long run. So if we factor in that most people have a 40-year career, let's just say they graduate high school at 18, you have a 4-year degree, which means you're graduating at about 22, and the average retirement age in the US is 61, the median retirement age is 62. So for ease of sake of math, if we just choose 62, so we have an even 40-year career for the average person, that's what we're going to base our math off of here. So if you, in that first job, did a simple $5,000 negotiation and you never negotiated again, that's $200,000 over 40 years that you make. Let's say you chose to do one negotiation every 10 years. So at the very beginning, and then at the 10-year mark, 20-year mark, 30-year mark, and then you retire at the 40-year mark. That puts you at 1.25 million. So 1.25 million that you leave on the table over those 40 years. And finally, let's say you do a negotiation every 5 years, which is probably pretty realistic for people switching jobs. Early on in your career, you might be switching more frequently, but once you get into leadership, you're probably switching every, I'd say on the low end 3, maybe the high end 7 to 10, unless it's just a really, really great alignment. So let's just say every 5 years you negotiate with incremental, because your negotiation early on from a flat amount perspective is going to be smaller than later on, because if you're making $175,000 a year, a $5,000 negotiation isn't necessarily that much, right? So you might be negotiating 10 or 12,000 in those later stages, but you could potentially be leaving 2.77 million on the table across those 40 years. Now, keep in mind, this is just the differential of the negotiation. This is not including the actual base salary and compensation package that you're making. So the difference over 40 years we're talking about here is $2.77 million potentially. And that's for negotiating only once every 5 years, which is probably on job change. What if you negotiate every performance review, every annual review, right? It's not unreasonable to be leaving 4, 5, 6, 7+ million dollars on the table. Okay. Now, let's take this to the next level. And what if you invested those amounts that we just left on the table over 40 years? So if we did these with simple 5% annual returns across those 40 years, then that 200,000 now becomes 600,000 that you just left on the table. That 1.25 million becomes 2.42 million that you left on the table. And that 2.77 million now becomes 5.14 million over 40 years. That's what we're talking about. Again, remember, this is not including base salary or compensation, but this is what it costs you to not negotiate, is on the low end, $600,000, and on a realistic high end, $5.1 million, But truly on the high end, it could be 8, 10, 12, $15 million. And this is for normal working people. We're not talking 20, 30, $40,000 salary negotiations. These were anywhere between 5 and 15,000, depending on your point in your career. That's what we're talking about here. Okay. So the last thing I want to add here is in a salary negotiation, who has the leverage? And the one who has the leverage is the one who's willing to walk away. And this is most often the employer. They have candidates. But if you are happily employed and maybe you're just scouting the market, or maybe you're just seeing what's out there, or if you do have a decent amount of savings built up or whatever it is, then you are also willing to walk away. I will be the first to admit that you might be in a scenario of desperation. And you know what? You have to take what you can get. And you can't negotiate, you can't take the risk, and you just have to take that. That is fine. We've all been there more than likely. Whether you're an entrepreneur that's now a millionaire or billionaire, you've probably been there where you had to take what you can get, or you're living paycheck to paycheck. You had to take what you can get. What I will say is if you are in that scenario where you have to take something so that you can get it, pay your bills, and just take that ease or that stress out of your life, continue to search. Don't stop searching just because you landed that bare minimum opportunity. Because now you do have more leverage and you can walk away because you can at least know your bills are paid should the next opportunity also be just as bad or not ideal. Okay. So remember, the one who's willing to walk away has the leverage here. So I like to address this from every different angle that we can. So if we look at this from the employer's mindset, let's start with them, because in the rest of the video, we'll focus on you as the candidate and the employee and the negotiator. So the employer's mindset. So we've already determined that it's the normal and it is the expectation. The initial offer from an employer is more often than not going to be on the low to mid range of their budgeted range. And you can't necessarily blame them for it, right? If they can get $100,000 worth of value for $70,000 in compensation, wouldn't you? Right? Like you can't necessarily be mad that they're trying to extract maximum value for as little pay, because on the flip side, most of us as workers are also trying to do the same, right? We're trying to get maximum compensation for as little work as possible, right? So it's the same equation on both sides. So you can't hold it against them. So you have to understand that this is why they're going to start that. And this is why negotiation is the norm, is because that's what they are doing by and large. So the other thing to really realize is people want high performing teams. Companies want high performing people. They want, honestly, disagreeable people that can disagree in a professional way. And so not negotiating can actually hurt you because it makes you seem like you lack the confidence to self advocate and truly understand and present your abilities, and that you also don't understand your market value. And so this can really actually hurt you in your candidacy by not negotiating. You might be battling between two people, you don't negotiate, and they're just like, well, this person negotiated, and yes, they cost more, but they were willing to do the research, present the opportunity, self-advocate, speak confidently, communicate clearly, and I'm going to choose them because I know that they have the soft skills, right? So negotiation is actually a metric of professionalism, and you should be doing it every opportunity that you get. And so, like I just kind of ran down my list there, when you negotiate, it's telling the employer that you've done your homework. You know how to research. You know how to be self aware and actually accurately gauge yourself against the market. It says you're serious about your role. You're serious about the company, and you know how to communicate clearly and in a self advocacy way. This is something that is, like I said, it is the norm. You should not be scared of this. The employer or the hiring manager is expecting it every now and again, because if you notice from the stats I gave before, it's not 100% of companies that expect this. So you might have some that just say, hey, this is not negotiable. This is our final offer. And that's okay. You know, we'll get to kind of how to handle that here shortly. And so I want you to put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes real quick. And if you're building a high performance team from scratch, then do you want someone who just simply takes the order, doesn't push back, and doesn't ask questions? Or do you want somebody who pushes back, demonstrates value, communicates confidently and clearly, and potentially tries to make sure we get to the best outcome at the end of the day, right? Like that's what we're doing here for negotiation. Okay. One of the things that I firmly believe in is a successful negotiation isn't the employer feeling like they got all that in a bag of chips for a penny on the dollar. And at the same time, it's not about you feeling like, oh, I got to steal. I got so much money and now I'm going to deliver so little value. A successful negotiation is when both parties feel like they walk away winning, right? That's what we're trying to achieve here. So that's the employer's mindset, thinking about it from their point of view. So now if we flip it back to let's focus on what you are going to do. So the first component of any successful salary negotiation is research. Straight up, plain and simple, getting the numbers and the data to back up your opinion. And this is because most people, where they go wrong is they base it off of their historical salaries. Oh, my last job, I was making $75,000 a year. So in this one, I'd maybe like to be at 80. But who's to say that when you go and do research, you necessarily haven't caught up, or your company was behind, or your company was below market value, and you actually should be making 95. And you do your research and you're like, holy smokes, right? So you would have just continued for years and years and years to diminish your value and not bring home the money you should be bringing home. So always keep up. And this is something going into every performance review. So every year you should be doing this research to negotiate and to understand where you actually fall in the market. And the common tools I recommend and use, most of you have probably heard of, but we're talking Glassdoor, PayScale, Salary.com, LinkedIn, Indeed. And then after that, like those are kind of your big generic job boards and feedback posting places. You also have recruiter specific ones. So like Robert Half is a big finance and technology recruiter. So they release a salary guide every single year. When you do, I would recommend building a network of recruiters in general and at a variety of agencies. I always like to say to have like 3 to 5 recruiters kind of on speed dial that you have a good relationship with, and look at what their agencies, give them a call and say, hey, I'm just curious, what is the comp looking like? What are standard benefits in this industry and for this type of role? And really get an idea of what they're seeing in the market as well, because the other sites, while great because they're kind of looking at job postings and job descriptions and self-recorded answers, when you're looking at something like a Glassdoor, it's typically people saying, I was at this company, I made this much, and I was this position. So you have self-reported and kind of job description analysis. But recruiting agencies, they're in the fire. They're in the market with you. So they are seeing what employers are actually offering and where they're willing to negotiate and where they're not. So these are the tools that I like to use. And the factors that we're looking for is your personal unique ones are going to be how many years of experience you have, what job title are you seeking, what is your education, or either degree wise or also certifications or licensures and those sorts of things. Um, and then you want to pair that information about you with the geographic location of either yourself or the company. And this is going to fluctuate depending on the type of role you're taking. So if it's an on-site or hybrid, then it's going to be based off the geographic region of where you and the company are both located, right? Because you're going on site in some sort of frequency. If it's pure remote, by default, I will say look at where the headquarters of the company is or the office that you're interviewing with is. And a lot of times that's what companies are going to base it off of. Some companies will truly base it off of what your cost of living is, and they will have different pay bands for every single position in every single state. But most companies don't do that because tracking that is a pain for them. So they'll usually just say, hey, I'm based in Georgia, so I'm going to use Georgia as my base of pay, and we'll recruit remotely from there. Something that's constantly overlooked is you also want to look at companies of similar size and industry. And this is because you're going to see different compensation packages when you look at startups versus Fortune 500s and everything in between, because they have different budgets, they have different tax benefits, they have different structures that allow them to manipulate and add different bonuses, stock options, equities, different manipulations of the compensation package to get you where you want to go. And then industry as well. So my personal story here is I always like to reference oil and gas because it's the most extreme that I've experienced, whether it be with my clients or myself, right? Is nothing changed about me, but I got a 30% pay bump when it came to going to oil and gas with no additional skill set, nothing else learned. And it was just because that was the industry. I was literally told at the company that I'd be put in golden handcuffs. So that is an industry where it's just paid more. So if you are targeting maybe an energy sector or maybe the AI sector or things that are in a state where right now they typically overpay, know that. So that way you're not going to get basing it off of the last nonprofit job you had and you're missing out on $50,000, $60,000 potentially. So research the company size and the company industry as well. And then this is going to be a little bit more nuanced one, but when you're looking at job postings for the positions you're looking for, look at signs of almost urgent language where they are putting out there like, hey, we are desperate, but we don't want to use that language. Things that are going to be like they might have a signing bonus. The job postings themselves consistently are rotating on like a weekly or sub-weekly basis. Like they're just getting, they're just constantly being pumped out and constantly being filled. Or there's language in there of urgently hiring or immediate openings or multiple openings, right? These are all in a way forms of desperation or forms of high demand that give you a little bit more leverage when you come to the table. And again, we want to look at Glassdoor, PayScale, LinkedIn, salary.com, recruiting agencies, and look at the geographic location, company size, company industry, and then the urgency language in the job postings and things like that to come up with your research. Now, the next thing is going to be understanding what is negotiable and what is not. So what is negotiable? Your salary, your bonus, potential stock options or equity or commissions, PTO. These are going to be the things that are most commonly negotiable. Things that are not are going to be things like your insurance premiums, your HSA contribution, your 401k contribution, maybe wellness programs, these sorts of things. Those are going to be your non-negotiables. And so what you want to do is you want to be doing your research to factor in all of these different offerings and understand how they play on each other. For instance, if you are going to negotiate maybe higher equity, then you're probably going to be bringing down your salary, right? Or if you are going to be, are you willing to bet more on performance and put more into bonus? And then you're going to, again, lower your salary. Or are you going to say, hey, I need top of the line salary, which is going to decrease your bonus, stock options, and equity, right? So it's all this give and take. And at the same time, if you are somebody who maybe values your work-life balance, you love to work hard and play hard, then maybe you calculate what your compensation, your salary should be. That can tell you the value of your PTO. And then you try to negotiate 1 to 2 weeks of additional PTO, especially if it's maybe a company to where they have an escalating program, which is what a lot of companies do nowadays. So, you might start at 2 weeks, and then at 3 years, you go to 4 weeks, and then at 5 years, you go to 5 weeks, and something like that. And that clearly means they have the policies and structure in place to give more PTO. You're just asking for it early. So you might not go on that escalating scale, but you could potentially get 5 weeks from day one for a lower salary. So again, understanding how all these things play and give and take, and that you're not just going to be able to say, I want high salary, high bonus, high equity, high commission, right? It's going to be a give and take. And the more risk you are willing to take, the more that a company is willing to usually negotiate that. So if you are willing to put high stakes into equity of the company, meaning your pay is based on their performance, then a lot of times that's actually easier to achieve and bringing down your guaranteed pay. It just really depends on your role and what you are doing. And what you want to do is once you understand all of these different components, so you've done your research, you know what the norms are for the company, you know what it is for the industry, you know about yourself, you understand what is negotiable. Now we want to break this into 3 levels of compensation, which is going to be your ideal, your target, and your minimum. Your ideal is like the dream. So this is going to be like, it's truly, it's not even what you want. It's beyond what you want. That is the definition of a dream. So if you're like, what, like my last job, I was making 80,000. My market research is telling me that, maybe the 60th, 70th percentile is like 100. You know what? My dream is like 125, like the 90th percentile, right? Whatever it may be. So have your dream laid out or your combination therein. I want $100,000 in salary with $20,000 in bonus and a 0.5% equity, whatever. I'm just throwing out random numbers. This is not meant to apply or be a real world example, but you come up with your combination therein that matches. Okay. Now, this is going to be a little bit more work on you as well, but it will serve you in the long run. There's a lovely negotiation technique that is called M.E.S.O, M-E.S.O, multiple equivalent simultaneous offer. I almost always mess up that acronym, but I think that's actually correct this time around. So what this is this is manipulating those variables we have at play to come to the same end compensation number. So again, if you're like, hey, I need a compensation package between the salary, PTO, bonus, etc., that equals $100,000. Okay. So what's my ideal here? Maybe 95,000 in salary, or no, maybe 90,000 in salary, 5,000 in bonus, and like 5,000 in PTO. Like that's like your ideal. Okay. But would I be willing to maybe do 85,000 in salary, 10,000 in bonus, and 5,000 in PTO? Or maybe 10,000 in PTO, 5,000 in bonus, and 85, right? So this is what we're coming up with. So I recommend we have our ideal, our target, and our minimum. And then each of those actually has 2 to 3 M.E.S.O offers. So this is where if you come back and you start with the offer saying, hey, I would want $90,000 for my salary, $5,000 in bonus, and 2 weeks of PTO. And that's give or take about what, that's going to come out to for about $100,000. And they're like, like we really weren't looking to do a salary that high. Okay, what if I came down to 85,000 salary, did a $10,000 bonus, and then the 2 weeks of PTO? Is that something that would work? Or what variables, are you willing to work with me on so that we can come to, an adequate solution, right? And this is where you are actually getting the same dollar value in the end, no matter what, but they actually are thinking you're negotiating to some degree. So even when you do end up with a variation of your ideal offer, you still got your ideal offer, right? You're still beating your target and beating your minimum. Now let's define target and minimum. Target is like your default gut reaction of like, what do you want, right? Like based off the research. I typically say this is going to be, depending on where you are as a professional, it's like where you should be. So if you are a 50th percentile employee, it's the median salary. Maybe you're new into this role. It was a recent promotion. So you're only, 6 months to a year in and maybe just looking for a different company. Then you might be at the 25th percentile. Don't look at the percentile that the research tells you that you are at based on your education and years of experience, etc., as like a knock against you. Look at it as, okay, great, I am at the 25th percentile. This is what I'm going to target. This is what I'm going to build things around. But now, how do I get to 50th? Is it just time? Do I need more skills? Do I need to learn something? Like now you begin to ask your question, like this is also going to spark your growth roadmap conversation internally of when you do your research for negotiation. And on the flip side, if you're getting to like the 70, 80, 90th percentile, then the question should be, wait, then why am I not being promoted? Like what is differentiating me from here to here? Like why am I sitting here at the 90th percentile of this position and I'm not qualified for the 30th percentile of the next, right? So this will shockingly go hand in hand. So that's what target compensation though is. Sorry, I digress again. Is that's what you want as like a gut reaction based off the research? Like where are you? Where should you be? Minimum is anything beneath that you're willing to walk away. Again, I will be the first to admit that if you are in a time of desperation, that you just maybe sometimes have to take what you can get. And I understand that. So this is assuming that you're not in that time of desperation, that you are at least in some modicum of bills being paid, even if that's paycheck to paycheck. What is anything beneath this? I'm out, I'm walking away, and I'm standing firm. That's what your minimum is. Last thing on this is never, ever, 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 ever accept the offer on the phone. Straight up, plain and simple, no questions asked. Okay. Even if they give you your dream offer, even if you're like, hey, my dream offer is I want $100,000 in salary with a $10,000 bonus and 4 weeks of PTO. And they're like, how about 130 with a $20,000 bonus and 6 weeks PTO? Hey, I'm very excited. I really appreciate this offer. Can I take 24, 48 hours to review it? Never, ever, 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 ever accept it on the phone. Plain and simple, end of story, no questions asked. So it's back to what I was saying before, that more often than not, their offer is on the low to medium of their range. Okay. So so this is where if their dream scenario, or maybe they're exceeding your dream scenario, then maybe you want to go back and refine your research. What did I miss? What is this thing, right? Like why are they going above what I thought was my holy crap? Am I just being too self-deprecating, or did I miss a variable, or what is it? So on and so forth. And maybe that's their market differentiator. Maybe that's how they attract top talent. You never really know, but never accept on the phone. Okay. So now we have done our research, and now we're going to get into a little bit more of knowing your value and how you accurately judge yourself in this equation. Because the key thing to understand is it's not just knowing what the role is worth, but it's knowing what you are worth in the role. Okay. That's what we want to do here. And so this is actually something that I'm going to recommend that you do, again, much like whether it's for a new job offer or you're going in for that annual review. So on a weekly or monthly basis, I advise you to list the achievements or impact or things that you have done. Like I said, either every week or every month. And this way you're always prepared. You're always prepared to update your resume, to build your resume, to negotiate your annual review, negotiate your quarterly review. When you get to a job offer, list off your recent achievements. Like you just have that bank at all times. And by achievements, I am talking tangible results, ideally quantitative, but they can be qualitative. So things like your revenue growth, your money saved, your process improvements, team leadership, efficiency gains, deals closed, morale and retention boosts, like whatever those things might be, have those lined out, have that list ready. And then you want to highlight your differentiators. And so this is going to be going back to a little bit of the education piece, the certifications that you have chosen from a specialized perspective, any kind of unique cross-functional experience that you have, working with other teams to build a better solution, to build a better program, a better product or company operation or whatever it might be. If you are maybe just somebody who is an industry veteran, right? You maybe have swapped roles a couple times, so on and so forth. But you know what? Like your entire 15 years thus far is just all in manufacturing or all in SaaS applications, all in finance SaaS applications, whatever it might be. Your industry specific knowledge, right? That you are truly, I am a master of this industry. Highlight that. If you're multilingual, how does that potentially help certain companies, right? Maybe they're looking to go international. You could help in their market penetration. You could help in their client relations, those sorts of things. Technical proficiencies that you have that are above when you look around and judge everyone around you and your peers and colleagues over the last few years. Like, what do they come to you for? What are your superiorities, right? And I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but all of us are better at some things than other people, and they're better than us at some things, right? And together, that's why we have a team, is because the team fills all the gaps and makes everything move forward, right? So this isn't well, I'm better than you. No, people are going to come to you for things because you are better than them at them, and vice versa. Recognize those. And the last one here is going to be your unique skill combinations. And so this is going to be things like looking at my background from IT, right? So IT people are a lot of times very introverted. They're not very customer oriented. They're not very presentation oriented. Their social skills might be lacking. And so I'm someone who I have been told throughout my career that I am both highly technical, highly engineered, and have that logic oriented mind and brain. But at the same time, I can interact with executives. I can convey business concepts. I can train new people. I have great customer service, great bedside manner, so on and so forth, right? So this is a unique skill combination. When you look at your peers around you and you're like, you know what? Like when I look at my finance team, I see that everybody is very logical, very numerical, very data oriented, but I don't see that anybody really understands marketing and sales. But I have a really good insight into marketing and sales, which is shown by blah, 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 blah. Unique skill combination. Identify those. That's going to be part of what we're doing here. And so this is going to tie into the conversation of how we're going to go about this later once we get to that stage. If you don't know your value, it's hard to expect somebody else to pay it. I'll say that again after I take a drink. If you don't know your value, it's hard to expect someone else to pay it. Okay? That's why we do this. All right. So a very understated variable in a salary negotiation portion is timing. Now, some of you might think this is insane. Some of you might think it's dumb, whether it's mundane, but I'm going to pose this to like your personal life. Okay. Let's say your best friend's father passes. Is that when you're going to ask them for a favor? Does timing matter there? Right? Let's say you've had a brutal day at work. You were just bombarded. It was terrible customers. Your manager was a jerk, whatever it might be. Do you want your spouse to come home and then just be like, I need to unload my burdens on you? Timing, right? Okay. So there's two different aspects of timing here. There's timing from the job offer candidate perspective and from the internal employee perspective. Okay. So if we're talking about the candidate perspective, do not talk salary, do not talk negotiation until you get to the offer stage, unless you're explicitly asked. Maybe you're working with a recruiter or a talent acquisition person, or just the company does gather that on the front end before they waste everybody's time. Awesome, beautiful. Tell them what you're expecting from the get-go. Start with something around your dream or ideal scenario, like we were talking about before. That's your starting point, because you can always come down from there. Okay. Now, when you get to the offer stage, that's when you negotiate. They clearly want you. You've already won. Right now, the question is, how much can I get out of them and how much can they get out of me? Right? Like that's what we're battling, is we're trying to get to where both of us feel like we are winning because we're both getting the most out of each other. Okay. So when you get that offer, absolutely time to negotiate. Internal employees, performance reviews and promotions. You should never take a promotion without additional pay. Never, ever, 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 ever. Okay. So, and then performance reviews, right? So if you're doing them quarterly or annually, ideally quarterly, negotiating your salary every quarter might be aggressive. But if you maybe have a couple quarters or you just had a killer quarter that kind of warrants it, and you kind of feel like you have the leverage to negotiate, do it. At the very least, do it for practice. Right? Like, what's the worst case that like they walk away and they say, nope, we're going to keep giving you what you're at. And you're like, okay, fair enough. Worth a shot. Right? Wayne Gretzky misses 100% of the shots you don't take. But performance reviews, absolutely. So these annual reviews, you should definitely be doing it every single time. And the way that we're going to go about this is highlighting your achievements and results and impact and tying that to the organization and the results that they felt, right? Or on the promotion side, right? Hey, based off of my research, for this position at this size company in this industry and geographic location, like I should be making this much money now that I'm getting this promotion. And that's also reflected in the responsibilities I'm going to be taking on, which are A, B, and C, right? So these are the types of discussions in which you're having this. And then the last one, and this is going to be more of a ad hoc, you need to be the judge here. And so sometimes you might put foot in mouth, and that's okay, because most of us learn by failing more than we learn by winning. Is after like real high impact wins, right? You do a company or department level operation overhaul. You land a major deal that's like the biggest in company history. You save a significant amount of money, to the point to where it's like noticeable percentage points of, P&L impact, whatever it might be. Like you have a huge, huge, huge win. It's worth having the conversation to be like, hey, like I just landed you the company's first 6-figure deal of all time. I think I deserve, either a promotion or a next level, or like, what can we do here? Like, I am committed. I want to do it again. I am fired up to do it again. How do we take this to the next level? Whatever it might be. But yeah, and even if it's not necessarily directly negotiating, but just going to them and saying, hey, with this win, I'm going to expect something else. So whether that's now or it's at my performance review, can we start that conversation? When not to negotiate. I mentioned, don't do it early on in the interview process. If they ask for your information in terms of your salary, comp, etc., give it to them. Don't negotiate early on, though. Okay. When you don't have data, you don't have context, and you haven't done the research, don't negotiate from an ignorant point of view. That's setting you up for failure. Again, we want to maximize your leverage, and unless you have data, you don't have leverage. I know I said it's the one who's willing to walk away, which is true. But if also you're like, hey, I want $200,000 and everything in the market and every position and company is hiring between 100 and 140, you screwed yourself. Okay. And again, you do not negotiate in that initial offer. You strategically delay. You answer the phone, they give you the offer, and you say, awesome. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I really like that offer. Will you mind if I have 24, 48 hours or 2 to 3 days to review this? Like, when do you need to know by? I want to make sure that we are on the same page, but I will need time to review and just make sure the holistic company package. Another great way to delay this is to actually say, awesome. I really like that information. Can you send me the information on the total compensation package? Your benefits information and guide as well, so I can get a total look at the picture and then let you know in 1 to 2 days or whatever that timeline's going to be. So again, we're looking to strategically delay here. Okay. And all of this is being framed as negotiation is a conversation. It is not confrontation. Again, it's the norm. It's expected. If you are not, you are in the minority of expectation. Ironically, you're in the majority of employees by not negotiating, but most employers expect it. Okay. So you're not demanding value. It's about aligning value. Okay. You want to say it with confidence and back it up with data. So now let's get into having this conversation. So you want to lead with research, not with emotion. Okay. So your initial ask should be anchored in the data and research that you found. Okay. So here's just kind of a baseline conversation. Hey, Zach, wanted to follow up on the job interview process for the IT director position. How are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing great, blah, blah, blah. Well, we would like to extend an offer to you. Do you have time to talk about it? Absolutely. Okay, well, what we're looking to offer you is going to be a $100,000 salary with a $10,000 bonus. We start out with 3 weeks PTO and a 4% 401k match, and the other additional benefits I may not have off the top of my head. How does that sound? That sounds great. I really appreciate it. Can you get the additional information about that compensation package from the benefits and other things and give me time to review? Yes. Okay, awesome. Send it over. Boom. Done. Okay. Now we're calling back. Hey, hey, John, I wanted to talk about the offer that we extended. We talked about yesterday. Do you have time to speak now? Or if you had a scheduled time, whatever. Yeah, that sounds great. I appreciate you hearing me. Okay. Well, based on my research from Glassdoor, PayScale, and Robert Half, when I look at the market rate for this, it's actually 120,000 when you come to the national average. And when we're looking at the city of Denver, they're actually over the national average, and so it's closer to about 130. And so based off of where then I fall, kind of around that 130 is the median, but based off of my experience and my impact in overhauling operations, saving money, so on and so forth, I really think I fall closer to the $140,000 camp. The rest of the information sounds fine to me, the bonus and PTO, etc. But I really like to get close to that 140 number because that's what the market is showing me. And then they might come back and, have some objections and things like that, or they might, have additional things and they might accept it. I will say if they accept it, I probably didn't shoot high enough. But this is where if they come back, there's going to be some potential common objections around, well, we don't necessarily have the budget for that, or, if we did it for you, we would have to do it for everybody, whatever it might be. And these are things that, again, you can practice. And we are going to talk about practice here shortly about how to overcome that. So please don't get necessarily bogged down in that. Stay tuned. We will talk about how to practice overcoming these objections and going from there. And so this is how you lead with the research, right? Is you're saying, hey, I appreciate the offer. I'm excited about it, but here's what I'm finding. And then let the conversation organically go from there, right? And so you want to anchor it with the data, also relate it to your achievements and impacts. And as like a bonus asterisk side note, the achievements and results that you provide to them should be related to everything you learned between the job description and the interview process. So you want to tailor this pitch to them. They, at some point in this process, told you the problems they're looking for you to solve. That's what you're doing, is you are highlighting solving those problems. So that way they feel that you listened, you learned, and that's what you're trying to do. Now, in the midst of this conversation, you want to use collaborative language. You want to use group language. So you want to use we's and us's and together, right? So again, when we're presenting this, you can say that my research was really showing that the market value for me and this opportunity is around 140, because what I'd really like us to do is to work together so that we can solve ABC problem. The track record that I have means that together we are able to do this, that we can come in, we can work together, and we can sit down, create a plan, take the action, and solve our problem in the next 6 months. Again, when we're relating our achievements and results to that company, it's not just that they gave us the problems and I know how to solve it, but it's using the language that makes you feel like you're already a part of the group. Okay. That's what we want to do here. And these are going to be, and that's what we're ultimately looking to do. And so it's not building upon that, right? If you do kind of reach an impasse, maybe they're just not willing to accept your offer or your counter offer or whatever it might be. Okay, well, what options can we explore that bring this closer to the market value? Or how can we align compensation with the scope of the impact that I'm going to bring, right? Is there even flexibility in what your initial offer was? Like, what was the initial budget for this role? I'm really excited about it. I really want to make sure that you and I, or we are feeling like we are both coming with the best outcome. To help me understand what are the variables at play in this offer. Okay. Now, when it comes to your delivery, you want to avoid over explaining. You want to be direct. You want to be respectful. You want to be ready to listen. And ultimately, you want to practice this, okay? Because you want it to be organic. And again, you don't want to just bombard them with demands, okay? Again, a successful negotiation is when both parties walking away feeling like they won, okay? So let's say that they just continue to come back with a low offer. You got two options here. Okay, so initially when you get that low offer, don't panic. Like I said earlier, that's the normal. So you're going to buy time, don't react emotionally. Then you're going to look at your data, do your counter offer, present it, reaffirm the interest and reframe the conversation, present some M.E.S.O offerings, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, you want to know your walk away point. And if they're just not meeting anything that is really entertaining to you and they're not even meeting your walk away point, then walk away. Like, there's no point in defining your minimum if you aren't going to stick to it. Have the confidence to know that you are worth that. Now, if you have your minimum and we're talking you've been at the stage of 5, 6, 7, 10 interviews and none of them are meeting your minimum and none of them are willing to have that wiggle room, okay. Just like before where they exceeded the dream and I said, go back to your research and reevaluate. Maybe you should be going back to your research and reevaluating. Maybe you missed a variable on your own self and inflated yourself. Okay. So remember, a low offer, it's just an opening and everything that comes next is up to you. And you do not panic. You do not get upset. You take it for what it is, do the strategic delay of 24, 48 hours, come back with your counteroffer, research, so on and so forth. And if they're just not willing to budge or they're not willing to come up as much as you need, then walk away. Okay. Now, here's some hidden benefits that most people don't really think about when it comes to the salary negotiation that one could argue should be in this masterclass and should not be. But this is going to be my bonus part of this. Okay. Negotiating makes you a better person and a better professional well beyond your wallet. You learn the ability to research and analyze data, interpret the data, look at somewhat complex or multivariate pay structures and benefits, and come to a conclusion of what's realistic and on your self awareness. It improves your self awareness and really asking, where do I fall in this market? You also learn financial modeling skills, right? You have to look at your budget, look how much money you need. What is the minimum? What is ideal? What is the dream? Why are each of those? Weighing the different offers and the opportunity cost and the total comp packages. Okay, so because you might have a scenario where, let's say, I always like using $100,000 because it's easy. So you might have $100,000 salary company, but then they're coming in at, you're going to pay insurance at $500 a month. Okay, so that's $6,000 in insurance premiums, which means I'm taking home 94. But then you might have another company that's actually coming in at 95,000 salary, but they pay all of your insurance. Right? So it's one of those things where most people are going to go, "Oh, I'm making six figures. Woo!" No. Take the 95. You're making $1,000 more a year. Plus, if they're the type of company that also is paying your full health benefits, they probably got some other sweet benefits too. Okay. So understanding the financial kind of model and looking at all the variables at play when you have multiple offers on the table and knowing what to do and what the cost of each is and doing that and evaluating that, right? Like this is another skill, like really evaluating complex life decisions, learning to read between the lines and know what's negotiable and not, and, really understand risk. Do I want to say, hey, you know what? I really would like more equity or more bonus in lieu of less salary, right? Because I'm confident in my performance, these sorts of things, whatever it might be. And then also difficult conversations, right? It's strategic preparation, execution, and planning and scripting of those conversations, right? Because we all have difficult conversations all the time. Friends, family, vendors, people who come and do work on your house, right? Like it doesn't matter. You are open to the vulnerability of difficult conversations every aspect of your life. And this is a way to practice, plan, and execute those and make you better at those when you get to that. You're also going to gain confidence because when you do get a successful negotiation, like let's say at your last job, you were at that 75,000. Now you're thinking you're at 80. You do your research and realize, holy crap, I'm actually worth 92, and you negotiate a 92. You're like, oh my God, like you feel so good about yourself, right? Because you just got made $1,000 per month, $12,000 a year more than if you didn't do this process, right? Like when, and I'm avoiding the word like you winning because again, it's about both sides winning. But like when you win a negotiation and you're like, I pulled it off, it feels good. You feel more confident in yourself, and that will then reflect in that job because you will also feel like that company cares about you. They were willing to negotiate. They saw your value. They saw your worth. It just creates a really good relationship. It also helps your emotional intelligence. This is never an easy conversation. No matter how many times you do it, you're always going to be a little bit nervous. And being rejected is still being rejected. It sucks, right? So it will improve your emotional intelligence and being able to manage these different aspects as well, and just your general communication, right? Being able to translate the story you're telling into value in a clear, impactful, and relevant way, right? Also, negotiation psychology, right? Like understanding timing and framing and influence and language and all these different components. These are going to be things that are going to help you out here as well. And these things, again, don't just help you professionally, or at least just don't help you in the job. Other professional examples, you're pitching new projects or new initiatives. You're asking for a promotion or more responsibility. When you're leading your teams and trying to maybe change the way that things operate, you're navigating difficult client situations. You're making big life decisions outside of work, or you have difficult conversations, like I mentioned, with friends, family, and spouses. Learning to negotiate your salary will make all of these things easier for you and make you better at them. Okay. Every negotiation is a practice for the next one. The more you do it, the stronger and more valuable that you become as a person, not as a professional, as a person. All right, so now we're getting into the most fun part about this masterclass. Practice makes perfect. So we're going to talk about two different things here. Okay. Keep in mind, I'm going to give you some sample scripts here, but these sample scripts are frameworks. So please adapt them to your language, your organic modality of speech, whatever it might be. Okay. But I mentioned earlier, a couple of these, so they'll be a little bit repetitive. So I'll spend less time on those and maybe expand a little bit on the ones that we haven't touched on yet. So when we're looking to strategically kind of do that initial delay on the verbal offer, right? So something like, so when you're buying time, thank you so much for the offer. I'm genuinely excited about the opportunity to join the team. I'd love to take 24 to 48 hours to review everything in detail. Would it be okay if we reconnect in a day or two? Discuss any questions that I might have. Okay. You want to end with that, any discussions or, talk about any questions or any discussions that are thoughts I might have, because that's planting the seed of there's going to be a conversation, right? Like you're already telling them in an indirect way, I'm going to negotiate this. So be prepared. Okay. When you're opening up that next conversation, right? Hey, John, thank you again for that offer. I'm really excited about the opportunity. I've been able to review the full package and understand all the different components, right? I'm really, really excited about the role, about the team, and about working for you. But before we finalize everything, I'd love to walk through the compensation side to make sure that we're aligned on the same page. Are you open to that? Right? And then this is where they're going to say, yeah, open to that, or no, maybe they're not open to it. Okay, well, if they're not open to it, that might end this conversation pretty quick. You say, well, is there any negotiation room? And if there's not, then you have to ask, where do they fall, right? Because if their offer came in at your ideal compensation and you're trying to negotiate and they say, no, like we gave you our best offer, that might be honest and genuine, right? Or if it even came in at your target. So that's what I mean is you then have to gauge the offer at that point. But let's assume that you guys are going to talk about it. So talked about this before, right? But, based on my research from Glassdoor, PayScale, Robert Half, and similar roles in this industry and in this, location of Denver, Colorado, I see that the range is typically from here to here. But when you look at my specific skill set, my education, certifications, and these impacts that I've made in my track record, this is what I believe actually makes sense. I believe that together we will be able to deliver on A, B, and C that was mentioned in the interview based on my track record. And because I'm coming in experienced, ready, and able to solve these problems immediately, I believe that that's why I deserve, X target compensation that you're presenting here. Okay. So that'll be the way of presenting that research. Okay. And then presenting the uniqueness of you, right? So like I said, I bring X years of experience. In my last role, I did blank, and maybe the last 2 roles I've done this. So that is your kind of holistic presentation, right? That initial comment should take you 30 seconds or less, right? Of saying, hey, based on my research, this is what I'm finding, but based on me, my uniqueness, that relates to them specifically. Okay. And then ultimately, again, close it out with collaboration, right? Like I'm really excited to bring the same level of impact to this organization, right? Like, is there room to adjust the offer? Are you open to that level of compensation, or what was the original budget, like based off of the value that I'll be bringing in? Okay. So this is where they might have some objections, or they might just accept. I don't know if I said this before. I think I did, but if they just accept your first counter offer, you probably didn't shoot high enough. Doesn't mean go back to the table and demand more, but going into your next one, maybe to do your research a little bit better. That's really what that would tell you. Okay. So overcoming a couple objections, right? So if they come back and say, the salary is firm. Okay. I understand the salary bands are fixed, but I'd love to explore if there's flexibility in other parts of the package. Your PTO, a signing bonus, annual bonus, equity, stock options, professional development funding, or a review in 6 months. Are there other things that we can work out to get me to where I want to go? I understand that, presenting this level of compensation might be difficult prior to me starting. So what can we do to either maybe set me up with a plan to get me there, or what additional variables can we talk about here? Right? Again, you're making it collaborative. You're bringing them involved. You're not making demands. You're saying, how can we make this work for both of us? Okay. They might also come back with saying, hey, I need to go talk to, my boss to get approval. Can I go do that? Perfect, right? Like you're not trying to force, just like they didn't force you in that initial verbal offer. This is the equivalent of your first counter offer. So you shouldn't force them into a corner either, right? So, hey, I totally understand. I appreciate you considering these options. I look forward to our next conversation. Keep me posted. Before we maybe disappear from this call, Is there anything else to discuss around the offer of the position that we haven't talked about yet, right? So again, you're still continuing to think about the future, about what's next, and about the relationship, but you're giving them the chance to do their due diligence as well. Okay. So they might also come back with, we don't have the budget. And this is where, again, we're going to kind of reframe it into that M.E.S.O scenario. Okay. The multiple equivalent simultaneous offer. I completely understand budget constraints, right? I appreciate you being transparent and I appreciate you letting me know. But based off of what I'm going to be able to deliver for your organization, can we talk about maybe what is going to be able, or what we could negotiate that maybe isn't going to impact the budget as heavy? Thinking about your PTO or about a signing bonus, or can we do a milestone roadmap? And in 6 months, if I accomplish it, then we're at this level of compensation. And then maybe 6 months later at the annual review, if I do the next set of milestones, then I'll be where we want to be. Like, I don't mind working and proving my worth, but I know that I'm worth this and I'll know I'll provide the value. So how can we work together so that you can get what you want from a results perspective and I can come out with the compensation so that together we have a long-term relationship? Okay. So you want to reframe that budget into how can we impact the budget less, but still work together to get to where I'm looking to go. Okay. And this is going to be really why this works is you're showing the empathy, you're showing flexibility and showing adaptability. You're keeping the conversation open. You're trying to move things forward. And it also shows that you think beyond the salary. Again, this actually goes back to not negotiating could hurt you. This is a form of negotiation that could help you in the grand scheme, right? It shows that you're not just looking at a simple or a single variable, right? You're taking in multiple variables and understand the manipulations at play and how they could affect the business and how you can maybe minimize the impact on them and maximize the result on you still, right? Like, you understand the give and take. All right. Another one. So this is what we offer for this role, or this is our typical range, right? And this is where you're going to say, look, I appreciate you extending the offer and I appreciate that this is what you do for that. But what I'd like to understand is how flexible that this is. Can you help me understand how you came to this number, what your data and researches are? And given the results, again, that I've delivered based off of our conversations in areas A, B, and C, I'd really love to find a way to make this work from a compensation perspective and me providing the value to you. So can you help me understand your side? Again, you seeking to understand, asking questions. You're not being offended. You're not being emotional. You're not arguing, right? Like, you're inviting them to both look at the impact you've driven already in your career. So again, you're trying to mitigate that negative against you, but you're also inquiring about them, right? Because maybe it is a temporary downturn in the company, or maybe there is something behind the scenes. And so just understanding where they're at and where they're coming from, then that's going to be very, very positive on your front. Another common objection is, if we do it for you, we'd have to do it for everyone. And this is where you're like, look, I totally understand that you would feel like you need to do it for everyone and that you need to have fairness across the team. But I want you to understand, again, the unique value that I'm going to provide. I'm not asking for special treatment, but compensation does reflect the unique value that I bring. And these are the expectations that you have discussed with me. And I'm coming in the table with solutions day one. And we've already talked about those solutions in the interview process. So I'd love to explore how we can align both the value that I'm going to bring and the compensation that you guys are providing. What can we do? Again, you're constantly just trying to reframe these objections and saying you understand them, you appreciate the company, and you're excited for it, but you're reiterating your value, your impact. And here's the thing. If they're just not willing to budge, they're not willing to budge, and you need to walk away. Or if their offer is already within a very, very acceptable range for you, then that's fine too. Again, this is a level of Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of shots you don't take. Okay. And now we get into the final component of our salary negotiation practice. Okay. Which is AI, ChatGPT. ChatGPT mobile is chef's kiss. Beautiful for this function. Okay. Because it has voice in the free version. So you can actually have a voice conversation negotiating this with them, with ChatGPT acting as the one that you're negotiating with. Okay. It allows you to have infinite practice on your schedule, on your dime, and you get infinite practice. Okay. So I will share my screen here for one moment just so you guys can see this prompt. So this is the prompt that we're going to be using here. So, acting as the hiring manager for X position that I have an offer for, I would like you to help me practice negotiating the compensation package, the advertised compensation package from X to X salary with the following benefits. When practicing this negotiation, I'd like you to present realistic and highly likely objections or obstacles in order to give me effective real-world practice. The negotiation practice will begin only when I say so. The negotiation ends when you have deemed that I successfully negotiated what I wanted, or you have deemed that I have failed at negotiating what I wanted. After the negotiation practice is complete, you will provide me feedback on what I can improve and how to increase my chances of successful negotiation and reinforce the aspects that I performed well. Before we begin, does this make sense? Okay. So now you take that prompt, you copy paste it. I recommend doing it in your computer, like trying to type that out or copy paste on mobile. Not my strong suit recommendation, but more power to you. So you put that in, let's say you put it on your computer, then you whip out your phone, open up the app, and then you hit the voice and you say, let's begin the negotiation. It starts a negotiation with you. And then you're going to have this conversation going back and forth, doing the objection handling, presenting your research and opportunity, and so on and so forth. And that's how you are ultimately going to get your reps. Okay. And here's the thing. Like I said before, all the scripts that I gave you, kind of those different ideas, remember, those are frameworks. So feel free to change the language and adapt it to being organic to you and the way you present your professional persona. Okay. I don't want you to be a robot. I don't want you to speak like me. I don't, that's not what we're trying to do here, right? I'm trying to give you the framework for you to plug in your language, and the practice is to figure out how to make that framework molded to you with your bolt-ons so that it's your organic, natural, confident presentation of you in this endeavor. Okay. And I want to circle back to two different things here, which are going to be, I'm going to give you two quotes and then I'm going to circle back to the cost. Okay. In life, we must choose our regrets. This is Christopher Hitchens. Okay. And then I'm going to quote Alex Hormozy. The quality of the hero depends on the size of the monster. Most people, again, don't negotiate. 55% of employees don't negotiate out of fear. I will remind you that you are potentially leaving somewhere between $200,000 over 40 years up to $5.14 million over 40 years as realistic numbers. Not overinflated, not, oh my God, I negotiated $30,000 salary every year. No, we're talking between 5 and 15 over the progression of your career, negotiating anywhere between once in your career and every 5 years in your career. Very, very realistic that you could potentially make an additional $5 million over 40 years. Okay. That's what I want you to understand. You want to know the crazy thing? That's over $100,000 a year just in negotiation. If you do that math, I believe that comes out to $125,000 a year over 40 years. So that's the money you're leaving on the table just in negotiating, not even in the base salary and compensation and benefits that you get all along the way. All right, so this is my salary masterclass. If you made it this far, it's a very, very long video, so I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope that this is valuable, but I think we covered salary nuts to bolts. If you have any comments, things to add or subtract or clarifications, leave them in the comments below. Check my track record. I respond to every single comment on every single video. That is why I'm here, to provide value to you. If you have feedback on my content and the way that I go about this, please provide me that. I am more than happy and always welcoming the feedback as a new content creator, because I make these videos for you, and however I can adopt your feedback to make them better, always happy to do so. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I do 2 long form videos every week, and roughly 10 to 15 short forms are released every single week as well. I'm also live down below on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you are looking for a career coach, please hit take the quiz that is linked below. And if maybe you just have some specific career questions, hit me up on Connect, which is also linked down below. All right. So again, I appreciate your time. This is one of my longer videos. So if you stuck with me, thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, thank you.